Does anyone know what PTSD is and what it stands for? The Mayo Clinic stated that PTSD is a mental health condition that is triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. A number of factors can increase the chance of developing PTSD, many of which are not under the person's control. So what causes it, and how can we minimize the severity of PTSD? My brother has a childhood friend that served 2 tours in Iraq. Before he left overseas, my brother knew that he was already short-tempered. So when he returned back home, my brother knew that he was different. He suffered from paranoia. The result may have been because he was away for long periods of time, or the war itself. So what if the military completed an intense screening before he went? Would this have changed the outcome of his life? Post-traumatic stress disorder does not necessarily just affect active military or veterans, but could affect someone who has experienced a horrific event, like say a death, accident, or even anything similar to that. So who does PTSD affect? It could affect a close friend or even a family member. For decades, neuroscientists and physicians have tried to get to the bottom of the aged mystery. This was provided by the Obesity, Fitness, and Wellness. The significant problem of post-traumatic stress disorder, which is caused by a traumatic event, can be solved by mandating a health screening. The mental well-being of our military is extremely important on duty and in time of crisis. So having a mental health screening before someone enlists in the armed forces is extremely critical. There was an interview on Talk of the Nation radio with General Steve Zanakis, who was a retiree from the Army Medical Corps, who stated that these screenings are instrumental, but they can only have so much fidelity. They're helpful and can give an indication that someone might be at risk, but that he also believes that an extensive assessment needs to be performed on these soldiers. Studies have indicated that 1 in 8 military service members who served in Iraq and Afghanistan who were wounded tested positive for post-traumatic stress disorder when they came back from combat. 6.8% of the general population will develop PTSD sometime in their life. This was provided by the Social Work in Christiana Journal. In cases where mental health disorder occurs, like PTSD, relationship distress is often the result. This was given by the Family Therapy Journal. For example, a victim's family can actually develop PTSD if, say, a suicide occurred by the veteran. The mental capacity of our brain can only take so much trauma, but what does necessarily mean that the person at hand cannot handle the situation? This would definitely be something to think about. So someone who wants to join the military have to meet specific guidelines. One of these guidelines is that the person needs to be in good health, meaning physically and mentally. They also have to go through a series of different types of other requirements in order to qualify. For example, the military.com stated that the cause for rejection for appointment, enlistment, or induction would be either suicide, attempt of suicide, or suicidal behavior. So if a mental health screening was not performed, this would be a greater risk for the person with a mental disorder if it's not treated at the beginning. The Journal of Traumatic Stress said that PTSD is a prevalent condition among our military servicemen. But what if the mental experiences of the recruit is not found on their record? The only way to find out is through a mental health screening. Mental health screenings will prevent recruits from enlisting in the military with serious mental disorders. The solution to this problem would be that the military needs to mandate an intense health screening before a recruit can enlist in the military, with no exceptions. If this is not completed, the recruit may be endangering himself or herself or others. The government needs to open their eyes and know that this is a serious problem, and PTSD does affect people's lives. The mental health screening we have now needs to be reevaluated so that it concentrates more on the past and present existence of a mental disorder. According to Military with PTSD, there was a soldier who stated that the PTSD replaced the person who was still growing and learning and trying to become an individual person, and it left a desperate survivor who didn't even identify with themselves and even hated themselves. If a recruit is unaware of early symptoms of PTSD, enlisting in the military may send them over the edge. Does anyone remember Major Hasan? Before the screenings were initiated, Major Nidal Malik Hasan was an Army psychiatrist who was located at Fort Hood. He was the person that killed 13 people and wounded 30 others. This was a horrific event in our country, and unfortunately it wasn't the last event. History.com stated that this was the worst mass murderer at a U.S. military installation. Military.com stated that Representative Glenn Thomas stated at the point of induction back then that there was no health exams performed, and that troops and veterans who had committed suicide made attempts before they even enlisted. So this is very unsettling. Military.com also said that recent studies had indicated that these informal screenings were not very effective, and problems did manifest after the person was already enlisted, which is too late. So how do we know that the current mental screenings are actually working? Every year, more than 180,000 people enlist in the armed forces. All recruits need to be evaluated thoroughly and not just on paper. If this means that we need to redo the testing process, then it needs to happen. Wanting an improvement is one thing, but action is even better. Additional studies must detect early symptoms versus later. Carefully reviewing medical records and giving a mental health examination would drastically help. This recommendation is important, and we need to do everything in our power to prevent massacres like Fort Hood, especially from assessment failure. The only way to do this is to call your congressman or state representative to currently enhance the process we have in place now. The mind is a very powerful organ, and doctors still don't completely understand. So now is the time to take action to protect the United States from incidents like Fort Hood. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.